The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
You know what makes every outfit look better? The right bra from Third Love. Their bras make it easy to ultimate cleavage, a smooth look, or even stop your shirt buttons from pulling. They make over 60 sizes, including half cups you won't find anywhere else, so you'll find your perfect fit. Third Love solves bra problems, or what they call broblems. Real women test every style they make. Comfort and support are guaranteed. So stop settling for bad bras. You deserve better. Get your problem solved today. Save $15 on your first order with code podcast15 at thirdlove.com.
1/3 of all murder cases in America remain open.
He had told me that if I opened my eyes, he would slit my throat.
Each one is called a cold case.
The DNA evidence taken from the victim was a match. The Linden rapist was at it again.
Based on the hit A&E television program.
A phone call is placed, one that changes a family's life forever.
Cold Case Files, the podcast.
You could see the fire in his eyes. He screamed at me, "You want it? Get your tape recorder out."
Get new episodes of Cold Case Files every Tuesday on Podcast One, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 316 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. We're just coming off the Memorial Day holiday weekend. Mine was awesome. I had, both my girls under the roof, and we were all together, and that just doesn't happen much anymore.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was a really cool time. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Kim Marsh.
Hey, Kim.
Tamala Galong.
Hey, Galong.
Phil D's Nuts.
Oh, that's like Grab's brother.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be amazing if that was somebody's real name. Lindsay Ray.
What's going on, Lindsay?
Carla Moore.
Hey, Moore.
Caitlin O'Callahan jumped out at our highest level.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Caitlin.
Rasmus Franzen.
What's going on, Rasmus?
Amy Forte.
Hey, Amy.
Travis.
Hey, appreciate that, Travis.
Melissa Bosworth.
There's Melissa.
Amber Beachy.
Awesome, Amber.
Heather Hafner.
Hi, Heather.
Dan Johnson.
Thanks, Dan.
Vance Bailey.
That's awesome, Vance.
Hunter Chandler.
Chandler in the house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Vushane Makumbaranga.
Well, thank you, Boomeranga.
Did you say boomerang at some point there?
Something.
Wendy Mack.
Hey, Mac.
Tiffany Bale.
What's going on, Bale?
And last but not least, Tiffany Sloan.
Hey, Sloan.
So two Tiffanys spelled differently back to back.
Two Tiffany's don't make it wrong.
All right. And then if we go into the vault.
Yes.
This week we selected Kathy Gropp.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah. Appreciate all the support, new and continued. We had no PayPal donations. So let's talk about what we have out on True Crime All the Time right now. We're talking about a guy named Alan Mackerly. And this case goes back to 1996. Alan Mackerly and a guy named Frank Black were in competition in business. And Frank Black ended up dead. And Alan Mackerly was charged, and the whole thing kind of goes from there.
It's kind of haywire.
Well, there's a lot of twists and turns, a lot of different trials and appeals and overturns. And so there's some fascinating stuff in it. Definitely check it out. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
In April 2014, two young women from the Netherlands were visiting Panama for a volunteer opportunity. One day they decided to go hiking and never came back. About 2 months later, their remains were found deep in the wilderness. Theories about their cause of death vary from a hiking accident to murder. We're talking about the disappearances and murders of 22-year-old Lisanne Froon and 21-year-old Kris Kremers. They were both university graduates. Lisanne graduated in applied psychology. A few weeks before she traveled to Panama, she moved into a dorm with Kris Kremers. They met while working at a cafe in Amersfoort. Lisanne played volleyball and did other activities like skydiving and mountaineering. She also enjoyed photography. A website dedicated to the women describes Lisanne as an aspiring, intelligent young woman. So she obviously had a lot going on in her life,
Sure.
but it sounds to me like she was also very adventurous.
I was going to say that. She's very adventurous.
I mean, this is some type of stuff that you do in your kind of off the books training. I mean, we're talking about skydiving, mountaineering, stuff that I'm not really comfortable with at my age. But to be honest with you, I never was comfortable.
Just think about how I got here today.
Yeah.
You know, I skydive in.
You were trying to figure out how to say it.
Yeah.
It's dove, dived.
Skydove.
Yeah. It's always strange to hear the big sound as you hit my roof.
Oh, yeah. Thud.
And then do a somersault off 2 stories onto the lawn.
I always nail the landing.
You do, which is amazing. Now, Kris enjoyed acting. She was described as having an open personality and being socially aware. Kris graduated in cultural social education, specializing in art education, in September 2014. She was supposed to start a follow-up study of art history in Amsterdam. Kris and Lisanne saved for 6 months to travel to Panama. They wanted to learn Spanish and do something of significance for the locals, according to the Find Kris and Lisanne Foundation website. They chose to volunteer with children.
That's a good way to go.
Wow, I just find this type of stuff amazing.
Yeah.
You know, you've got some young people here who are not just thinking of themselves. They're not thinking about the latest, greatest tech, iPhone, Snapchat, I don't know, you name it, whatever it is, video game. They're looking to do something good for humanity, and it's kind of heartwarming. And I don't know how much of that we're seeing nowadays. People giving up their free time to volunteer to help others, and not just down the street. I mean, they're having to save up their own money to travel to Panama, and they want to volunteer to work with children. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing something fun for themselves, you know, part of their adventurous appetite. You know, they're going to be able to go down there and experience that. But while they're there, they're also going to give their time to where it's needed. So again, it's awesome.
According to NBC, Kris and Lisanne traveled to Panama on March 15, 2014. They stayed in the town of Bocas del Toro for 2 weeks. They completed a 2-week Spanish course before traveling to the town of Boquete. They planned on volunteering at a local school for 4 more weeks.
The fact that they got through a Spanish course in 2 weeks, pretty impressive.
Well, it is impressive, but, you know, I think we've learned, and I know we've talked about it before, people in other countries outside of the U.S. seem to speak so many more languages than we do.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, number one, a lot of people speak English in addition to their native language.
Right.
But a lot of people speak multiple languages. And I don't know if that's a school thing, if language is just emphasized. You know, for us, it was always Spanish or French, and which one do you want to take, and which one do you want to, you know, kind of trudge through.
But that was later in life.
Yes, that wasn't like first, second grade.
Yeah, where some of the schools in other countries, they teach the kids another language early on.
Yes, and obviously that does help.
Sure.
But I'm always amazed when somebody is described as being able to speak like 8 languages because of how much you struggle with just English. To think of somebody kind of mastering 8 different ones.
Yeah.
How's that make you feel?
Oh, I can do it. I just choose not to.
You just choose not to. According to the BBC, Boquete is known as a tourist destination in a mountainous region of Panama. It's popular with hikers who want to explore the cloud forest, waterfalls, and coffee plantations. In 2009, a 29-year-old British man disappeared from Boquete. When Kris and Lisanne got to Boquete, they were told they couldn't start their volunteer work until the following week, which meant that they had an entire week of free time that they weren't planning on.
That's music to adventurous' ears.
Yeah, no, it really is. According to the Daily Beast, Kris wrote in her diary that the assistant instructor was very rude and not friendly at all. There was not yet a place or work for us, so we could not start. The school thought it odd as it was all planned since months ago. Tomorrow they will try to get a hold of the head teacher. This was a real disappointment. Anyway, go with the Panamanian flow. So, you said that would be music to an adventurous ears, and it would, most people.
Yeah.
These two young women are so special in my eyes that they were disappointed because they were there to volunteer.
They were excited about getting to be with the children.
Yeah, where most of us would say, oh, we got a week off? Great.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound as though that's the way they looked at it, and it's just adding to my admiration for them.
I also have a problem with why someone would be rude to them. They're donating their time.
Yeah.
Why be rude to them? Just
because some people are rude no matter what the situation is, I guess. But I like her last kind of ending statement. Anyway, go with the Panamanian flow. Kris wrote this entry on April 1st, 2014, the day that she and Lisanne went missing. On that day, Kris and Lisanne were having trouble choosing between two walking routes, according to the NL Times. One of the routes was the El Pianista Trail. According to the Daily Beast, the Pianista Trail climbs in a series of ladder-like steps reminiscent of a keyboard up from the tourist town of Boquete to the Continental Divide at about 6,660 feet.
Sounds like a heck of a workout.
Well, that is very, very high. What's the high city here in the U.S.?
Denali, maybe?
City.
Oh, cities.
What's the mile high city?
That mile high city out there, out in the west, in that town called Denver.
Denver. Do you know how far above sea level it is?
A mile.
5,280 feet.
Is that a mile?
I think it is. I don't know. I don't know if it's exactly a mile. And the only reason I know is because they're getting ready to start the NBA finals.
Yeah.
And they say that altitude gives them such an advantage because the visiting team coming in is not used to it. And they're gassed by the time, the game just barely gets started.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time in Denver before. You got to go out, get acclimated to it, start drinking water. You got to keep fluids in you.
Yeah. They say it takes a while to get acclimated to it. Ingrid Lomers, director of a language school where the two women visited, said that Kris and Lisanne turned back to Boquete after 30 minutes. According to the NL Times, they were exhausted. And maybe that has something to do with it. That type of altitude where a 30-minute walk where you're from would be nothing, right? You might not even break a sweat, but at a very high altitude, it's a different ballgame.
So you're exerting more energy to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, definitely you are. According to Dutch News, Lomers reported that an American living in Boquete gave the women directions along a trail. The women returned quickly and sat by the road near a hostel. The owner spoke to them. Lomers told the paper Volkskrant, another man who runs a shop further along the road, saw two young women walk by, but we're not 100% sure it was Kris and Lisanne. We don't know what happened then. No one saw them get in a bus or taxi. NBC reported that Kris and Lisanne asked an innkeeper for directions for their hike, then returned to him and asked for help getting back to town. The man advised them to take a taxi, but he didn't see if they went to town or back to the mountain. So there are some things that are known, but there are a lot of things that are unknown here. We know that the two women talked to certain people.
Right.
Certain people saw them, but we don't know if they took, like this one person's advice and took a taxi back to town, or even tried to go back to town.
Or did they venture other way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or went to the mountains and decided to give it another shot. We just don't know. What we do know is that Kris and Lisanne failed to meet their guide for a walk. The guide checked in with their host family, and the women were reported missing. But an official search didn't start until April 6th, which I think to us would be very troubling. That's 5 days.
There's a lot of things that can happen in that period of time.
And we don't really have the information as to why, it took that long.
But if you're up in that altitude, if you're not prepared for that, that could be devastating.
Yeah, things can go bad quickly. The Dutch Foreign Affairs Ministry said that a major hunt was launched for the women. President Ricardo Martinelli emphasized that Panama was doing everything to find the young women. Police and locals searched all the trails the women could have taken, but there was no sign of them. At a press conference on April 14th, it was announced that the search was being scaled down. A police spokesman said that the area around Boquete was searched several times. If Lisanne and Kris were there, they would have been found.
Pretty confident.
Pretty confident, but can you be that confident? Can you confidently say that and be 100% accurate? And I would say no.
I would agree with you. We've seen some, what would appear to be very simple areas that have been searched to find out later that the missing person was found in those areas. And
yeah.
you would have thought, how could you miss them there?
Well, we talked how many times about people being found in an area that was already searched once, multiple times. So did they just miss them the first time, or were they relocated back to an area that someone knew had already been searched? We don't know that.
We don't.
But could they also have been held in somebody's house?
Could have.
And so to say with that type of certainty that they would have found them, I think that's pretty tough to do. According to an April 15th article by Dutch News, eyewitnesses said that Lisanne and Kris were seen eating lunch with two young men. The AD, or the General Daily Paper, reported that it was thought that they were two Dutchmen and that they were back on Dutch soil. The Dutch police confirmed to the AD that the men would be questioned. The police wanted to know if they had any information on the women's plans for later in the day. According to the AD, Lisanne and Kris were seen with two other Dutch men during their first 2 weeks in Panama, and they would also be questioned. Now, the parents of the missing women initially thought they got lost while out on a hike, but as time passed, they became increasingly under the assumption that there's a possibility of criminal intent, according to BBC. And, we talk a lot about the families of missing people. Now, a lot of times it's individuals who go missing in the same area where they live. And that's tough enough.
Sure it is.
Imagine a scenario where your child is in a different country and they go missing. And we have covered some of those cases.
Yeah.
It's got to be very, very difficult.
You would want to try to relocate there, right?
And some parents have relocated. But I get their initial thinking, right? They were out on a hike. They got lost. We'll find them. But the more time that passes, I get that thinking would start to change a little. Okay, if they did get lost, then something bad happened, or there was some type of foul play. The families of the missing women offered a $30,000 reward for anyone with concrete information about their whereabouts. On April 22nd, the Dutch police said that Kris and Lisanne were unlikely to have gotten lost, which I think even further raised the possibility of criminal activity. According to NBC, the families posted a message saying, "After 3 weeks, there has been no trace of our daughters, and we live daily between hope and fear. These are difficult times for us, as you can understand. The search for Kris and Lisanne continues unabated, and we hope that you will continue sending your tips and suggestions. And I found that to be probably a really good description, right? This family is living daily between hope and fear.
It's a tough place to be.
Yeah, but it's also very descriptive. At a press conference on May 19th, 2014, Justice official Bethsaida Pitti said she would do everything possible to find Kris and Lisanne, which included the possibility of sending tracker dogs from the Netherlands to assist in the search, which had been requested by the families. On May 25th, 2014, a Dutch team of 18 people and 12 dogs arrived in Panama to assist in the search. The team coordinator said that the dogs were specially trained to find people alive or dead. The new search was set to start the next day. Unfortunately, the search team didn't find Kris and Lisanne.
Talk about some dedication, though, to get this team of dogs from the Netherlands to Panama to pull off this search. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, with 18 people and all of that. Dutch detectives flew to Panama on June 15th after a local woman found a backpack containing 2 mobile phones, 2 bras, a digital camera, and money. The woman found Lisanne's backpack on the riverbank near the village of Alto Romero in the Bocas del Toro province, a 12-hour walk from the Continental Divide. No trace of the missing women was found. Detectives hoped the phones would provide information about their last movement. Hey folks, my wife and I have been talking about taking a trip to Spain. If you have an upcoming summer trip abroad, my go-to travel hack is Babbel. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or embarking on your first adventure, communication is key to fully experiencing a new culture. That's where Babbel comes in. Babbel is the language learning app that's sold more than 10 million subscriptions. Thanks to Babbel's addictively fun and easy bite-sized language lessons, there's still time to learn a new language before you reach your destination. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. This is not like taking Spanish in high school or college. Babbel makes it fun. With Babbel, you only need 10 minutes to complete a lesson, so you can start having real-life conversations in as little as 3 weeks. Other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans, but Babbel lessons were created by over 150 language experts and voiced by real native speakers, not computers. With Babbel, you can choose from 14 different languages. Start your new language learning journey today with Babbel. Right now, get up to 55% off your subscription when you go to babbel.com/unsolved. That's babbel.com/unsolved for up to 55% off your subscription. Babbel, language for life. Angie's List is now Angie, the home to skilled neighborhood professionals. Angie is your home for everything home, and they've made it easier than ever to connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. If you own a home, you know how much work it can take, whether it's everyday maintenance and repairs or making dream projects a reality. It can be hard just to know where to start, but now all you need to do is Angie that and find a skilled local pro who will deliver the quality and expertise you need. Angie has over 20 years of home service experience, and they've combined it with new tools to simplify the whole process. Bring them your project online or with the Angie app. Answer a few questions, and Angie can handle the rest from start to finish, or help you compare quotes from multiple pros and connect instantly. And all of that means you can take care of just about any home project in just a few taps, because when it comes to getting the most out of your home, you can do this when you Angie that. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. So I just talked about living on kind of the edge of hope and fear. And I think this exemplifies it, right? This find. You're hopeful that they found some stuff, but you're fearful that they found stuff, but not your loved ones. What does that mean? What it led to was authorities launching some new searches of the area. And this led to the discovery of bones in 2 different shoes on June 19th in Bocas del Toro province, according to BBC. On June 20th, Dutch media outlets reported that shoes and bones were undergoing forensic investigation. On the 23rd, Dutch news reported that human remains were that of Lisanne Froon. A human bone found nearby would undergo DNA testing that day to see if it came from Lisanne or Kris. There were no traces of violence on the bones, according to a researcher. According to reporter Eva Weissing, it was then thought unlikely that the women were victims of a crime. The area where the remains were found is considered a difficult 8-hour walk for locals, but for non-locals, it was said that it could take 15 to 16 hours. She said it was unlikely the women were forced to walk that distance. And I understand that thinking. Number one, would an abductor force two women to walk that far, only to then kill them in that spot? Or kill them in a spot and take their bodies that far? Possible, but unlikely.
Yeah, I say probably unlikely.
And then the other option would be that another hiker out that far encountered the women and, did something to cause their deaths. Possible, but I guess we'll have to see as we go through the episode.
Right.
On June 25th, Kris Kremers' family announced that forensic testing revealed the human remains belonged to her. Kris's family said they had to confront the tough news that, just like Lisanne, Kris also died during her trip to Panama, according to BBC. So extremely tough for both families. You're hopeful, but at the same time you're fearful. And then you get the
crushing news.
Yeah, the crushing news that kind of wipes all hope away. Both of these women are dead. So the search part is over. They've been found. Now we're moving on to what happened to them, right? Was this an accident caused by getting lost on a hike, or were they the victims of foul play? The causes of death for both women were unknown. Local prosecutor Bethsaida Pitti said no one was being investigated in connection with the women's deaths at that point, but the discovery of the remains led to even more questions. The Dutch authorities felt that the women's deaths were most likely an accident, but they admitted that they couldn't rule out foul play. Panamanian authorities publicly speculated about the possibility of a criminal act per the Daily Beast. And that's interesting to me because you would think it might be the other way around.
Exactly.
Because this happened in Panama, you might think that the Panamanian authorities would kind of come out on the side of this was most likely an accident.
Yeah.
And maybe the Dutch authorities would think, well, there might be some foul play there, but it sounds like it was the other way around. The Daily Beast reported on what items were found. In a July 2016 article, inside Lisanne's backpack, investigators found 2 bras, 2 smartphones, 2 pairs of sunglasses, a water bottle, her camera, her passport, and $83 in cash. And I'll tell you, the first thing that goes through my head is this is not a robbery, because somebody would have looked through that backpack. They would have most likely taken the camera, for sure have taken the cash.
And most likely the passport, because they could typically
do something, sell it. Yeah. So I think you kind of throw that, off the table. According to the Daily Beast, searchers from a local indigenous tribe helped find bone fragments along the Rio Calabria. Lisanne's boots were found with her foot and ankle bones still inside.
Gruesome.
Yeah, that's a gruesome thought. 5 fragments were identified as belonging to Kris and Lisanne, but searchers submitted bone chips from up to 3 additional individuals.
I think it's potentially a very dangerous area.
Well, it sounds like it remote, right? Takes X amount of time to get there. 15, 16 hours if you're, not a local. It's not like walking outside of my house. I'm not going to get lost.
No.
And not be able to either make it back home or make it to another house, make it to a gas station where I can buy a pop or something like that. This is a much different area. But what do you make of additional bone fragments from at least 3 people? Did 3 other people just happen to perish in, the same location, the general location? Or could we be looking at a possible dumping ground for a killer.
Possible. Or a possible hunting ground that turns out to be the same dumping ground, too.
Yeah, well, in a lot of areas, because there are people, there are concentrations of people, a lot of times the spot where somebody is abducted, the spot where they're killed, and the spot where, their body is ultimately disposed at may often be 3 different places. In this scenario, this is so remote that it could all be the same place. Now, I think what would be tough is for a predator to just be out there waiting for someone to come along because it is so remote. I don't know how many people trudge past this point on a daily basis, but I don't know. You could be onto something. One of Kris's empty boots was found. Her denim shorts were also found and were allegedly zipped and folded on a rock above the waterline near the headwaters of the river, a 1.5 miles upstream from the backpack and other remains. Now, when I hear that, to me, it sounds like somebody, took off their clothing because they didn't want to get their clothes wet, neatly folded them, got in the water, maybe got swept down, there was an accident, something like that. The young women took photos of themselves on April 1st, the day they went missing. According to the Daily Beast, Kris and Lisanne left the trailhead around 10 a.m. on April 1st. They were wearing light clothing and had Lisanne's small backpack with them. Pictures show the two smiling and having a good time on their hike. Geographical features visible in the last photos indicate that they left the Pianista Trail by mid-afternoon and crossed to the other side of the Continental Divide. So, at the very least, at the time that, some of these pictures were taken, they weren't in distress. They weren't worried. They were smiling. They were having a good time. They were enjoying each other and their
hike
activity. Yeah. According to Law Australia, a Panamanian news outlet, on April 8th, the week after Kris and Lisanne went missing, Lisanne's camera took 90 pictures between 1 and 4 a.m., which meant, on average, one photo was taken every 2 minutes. That is a lot of picture taking.
That's extreme.
Now, my wife takes a lot of pictures on her iPhone, but nowhere to that degree. Only 3 of the 90 pictures retrieved from the camera's memory card show a clear image. In the other pictures, nothing can be clearly identified. The first picture was taken at 1:38 a.m. The picture shows a rock surrounded by low vegetation. The second picture was taken at 1:39 a.m. It shows the branch of a bush over what looks like a rock with similar vegetation to the first photo. A red plastic bag can be seen on each end of the branch, and chewing gum wrappers and papers can be seen close to the branch.
Well, so that's interesting.
Well, it is, because what do you make of it? I have no idea. But when you tell me that there were 90 pictures taken and only 3 of them show a clear image, what does that mean? Does it mean somebody was holding their phone, they were running and accidentally hitting the button? 90 times seems like too many to be accidental. Or did someone else grab it and, just take a bunch of random photos for whatever reason, to throw somebody off? I don't know.
One way to do it, right? Take
Maybe
a bunch of photos and make it look like this is what happened and this is where they were and what they did.
But why take so many that don't have a clear image? If that's your goal.
Maybe to confuse people.
Well, it's working on me because I'm confused by it. And then, this red plastic bag on each end of the branch, papers, chewing gum wrappers, what does it mean? These 2 women don't sound like habitual litterers to me. And it wasn't confirmed whether the women took the pictures or why they would have taken these pictures. 2 hours after the last photo was taken, on April 1st at 4:39, Kris called 112, or the Dutch Emergency Services, using her iPhone. It was the first of several calls they made. At 4:51, Another call was made from Lisanne's Samsung. Both cell phones made 8 calls to the emergency line. The women also tried to call Panamanian emergency services. The last call took place on April 3rd. The Dutch forensic report states that it wasn't possible to obtain a position from where the calls were made or the path that the women took after 1 p.m. on April 1st. La Estrella also reported that one of the phones was turned on 11 days after the women went missing, but the PIN code was not used.
So stranger.
Yeah, so if you go the stranger route, the stranger found the phone, turned it on,
couldn't unlock it
and just put it back?
Yeah, possibility.
It's a possibility.
Maybe they turn it on to figure out if they can see who it belonged to.
But what do you make of these emergency calls? Because they span a couple of days here. So, this doesn't sound to me as though these are 2 women, calling emergency services because they're in trouble right then and there. Meaning they're being chased by someone or they're fearful for their lives. Now, they could be fearful that they're lost. That, to me, maybe makes a little more sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the reason why they're able to make so many calls and that they span over, a couple of days. According to a report from the Panamanian Forensic Medicine Institute, 28 bones, a femur, tibia, and foot belonging to Lisanne were analyzed. The researchers found periostitis, a medical condition caused by inflammation of the periosteum, the layer of connective tissue that surrounds bone. Okay, I don't know if I'm saying any of that correctly. I've never heard of either one of those, but it was written that this can appear when a person accelerates their level of training, which can cause muscles to be pulled, according to La Estrella. Now, they're on a long hike at altitude. And at some point, if you realize that you're lost, are you then maybe exerting even more effort because you're frantic? You're trying to find your way back. You're trying to find someone who can help you. Would that explain the accelerated level of training, as they put it? Maybe. Or maybe these were just women who ran a lot, trained a lot. The IMLCF also analyzed Kris Kremers' rib and pelvic bone. All they found were microscopic organisms, which could be useful to identify a place of death. The Kremers family lawyer, Enrique Arocha, demanded that the prosecutor state their hypothesis about what happened to the women. He did not believe the theory from Bethsaida Pity that the women were dragged by the river. Arocha pointed out that the low water levels at the end of the dry season, which he said were insufficient for dragging a body, he asked Pity to rethink her hypothesis and run field tests that took into consideration the time between the last photo and the first emergency call. So in November 2014, Attorney General Bethsaida Pity publicly declared that the women died from a hiking accident and were dragged to death in a river system.
It's a possibility. I mean,
sure it is.
It's just, at this point, it's just another theory.
Well, and again, I think that's why they use the word hypothesis. Can't conclusively say that. You don't have the proof that that's what happened. But I can also see how, maybe she's coming to this conclusion. We mentioned the shorts neatly folded above the waterline. The other thing I was thinking was, we talked about bone fragments from 3 other people,
right,
being found. Could it be that those people too, at different points in time, were victims of the water?
Could have been.
And that they all kind of flowed and ended up in a similar place.
I think a lot of people underestimate the strength of a current.
Oh, definitely.
Even in what you could say be a fairly shallow river.
Mm-hmm. Well, but according to the defense attorney, it was too shallow to actually drag a body.
Yeah.
So they seem to be at odds over that part at the very least. A final search was planned between January 12th and 16th, 2015, at the request of the families. The investigative team included a forensic anthropologist, a DNA specialist, a criminologist, and 4 dogs. My money would be on the dogs.
Me too.
In March 2015, investigators' latest research stated that the likely cause of death was falling off a cliff. According to the NL Times, Kris's family said that they were relieved to have a possible and plausible explanation. And you would have to say, yeah, it's possible. It's also plausible. Now, here's the part that I always struggle with. If you had one person, that would make a lot of sense to me. You make one misstep and let's say you fall off a cliff.
Sure.
But now both people have to fall off the cliff at the same time. Does that make it more likely or less likely?
I think less likely. I mean,
not impossible.
No, I mean, someone could reach out, grab a hold of you,
yes,
keep from falling and, take you down with them.
Yeah.
You could be at a spot where maybe the side of the
ground gives way.
Yeah, collapse and you fall, you don't have a choice. I mean, there's probably a dozen scenarios that could happen.
Forensic pathologist Frank Vandergoot, head of the research team, said, having taken the geographical and social conditions into account with the technical facts that emerge from the forensic investigation, a crime in the form of robbery, rape, violent crime, or kidnapping is very unlikely. And I would say I would agree with the robbery, the kidnapping for sure.
Yeah.
We talked about that it didn't seem like a robbery. It also would, to me, seem very strange to kidnap 2 women and take them that far when the whole area is pretty remote. You wouldn't need to go that far in, I don't believe. Now, I don't know how you rule out the other 2 things without having a cause of death. And obviously there was no way I don't believe they could tell if they had been sexually assaulted.
No, I don't think they could.
Experts say that cliffs in the area are 30 to 40 meters high, and climbing a cliff wall without proper equipment is almost impossible. Water currents at the bottom of the cliffs also make it difficult to find human remains. And that may lend more credence to the theory that these bone fragments kind of washed downstream along with some others over time,
right,
and collected in kind of the same area. In July 2016, the Daily Beast reported on leaked documents and photos in the case. The lack of answers in the case led to suspicion and allegations of foul play. And there were some wild theories that were floated and have been floated in this case. Some of the theories involved cannibals, cartel hitmen, organ traffickers, or that the women were kidnapped, raped, and murdered.
Well, you could make a case for each and every one of those. You could.
Okay, make a case for cannibals.
Well, it could be some people that scour that area, find their victims, do what they got to do.
It seems like such a remote place, so far away.
But isn't that ideal for somebody like that, maybe?
Yes, I get that part, but what are the chances that you're going to encounter someone?
The chances are going to be small, but there's still a chance.
Yeah, I just, on the plausible meter, I'm putting that towards the bottom.
Yeah.
I'll just be honest with you.
The needle's not moving very much.
No, not for me. If we're talking about, cannibals or anyone that's really kind of laying in wait for someone to walk through this area, because it just seems as though they would spend so much time without anybody coming by. The Daily Beast received secretly leaked copies of the official case files, which contained autopsy reports, data from a camera, and 2 phones, DNA analysis maps, and Kris Kremers' diary. Expert guide Plinio Montenegro told Daily Beast writer Jeremy Critt that when tourists get lost, they usually turn up or are found by search parties. So the fact that Kris and Lisanne didn't come back from their walk was considered strange.
Meaning that foul play, or that they could have fallen to their deaths?
Yeah, I think you could say one or the other, or some variation of that. I think the bottom line is he's saying, yeah, people get lost, but eventually they find their way somewhere where they can get help. So my thought is he's kind of taken out they got lost and died from exposure.
Right.
Because he just doesn't think that's part of the plausible theory, I guess. The Kremers family attorney, Enrique Arocha, told the Daily Beast, the official version of the story makes no sense. The problem is that the government's hypothesis is completely illogical. If my client and Miss Froon had died of natural causes, grease from decomposition would impregnate the clothes and backpack. It's almost impossible for the bones to be in this condition. The evidence seems to have been manipulated in order to hide something. At the very least, there should have been a criminal investigation. Even the Panamanian forensic examiners wanted to do that, but the prosecutor threw out all our petitions. Writer Jeremy Critt also talked to a local rancher and guide who asked to remain anonymous. He was one of the last people to see Kris and Lisanne alive. According to Critt, rumors were circulating that he orchestrated the women's abduction. He was questioned by police officers, but no charges were ever filed against him. Witnesses said that this guide met Kris and Lisanne less than 24 hours before they disappeared on the campus of the language school. The women were staying at an all-inclusive language school called Spanish by the River, according to the Daily Beast. And this does conflict with some information that we mentioned earlier. You know, some outlets reported that they were staying with a host family. The Daily Beast said that they were staying at this language school. So, you know, that happens a lot. You get conflicting reports. But it was said that the guide reportedly offered them a full package tour, which included a hike to the Continental Divide and an overnight stay at his ranch. Kris and Lisanne declined his offer. The next day, they went hiking on their own and were never seen alive again. So I don't know what you make of this guide. He was questioned. No charges were ever filed. If you want to throw out a theory, it could be that they mentioned to him where they were headed, what path they were going to take.
Right.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, maybe he went up there and
found them,
yep,
killed them. Again, I'm not so into the random person kind of laying in wait for someone, but if someone had advanced knowledge of what path they were going to take, that may change the narrative a little bit. Jeremy Critt spoke with the man a second time, and he told him, talk to the Attorney General if you want information, or talk to CENIPROC. CENIPROC refers to a National Service for Civil Protection. According to the Daily Beast, when the women first went missing, media outlets portrayed the search efforts as prompt and efficient, but locals disagreed. John Tornblum, a guide, told the outlet that they were looking for the women 3 to 4 days before CENIPROC got involved. And we mentioned that it seemed like the official search kind of took a while.
It did. You had that
about 5 days.
6 days. Yeah.
Tornblom said that the volunteers searched for the women on the Beru volcano, a popular attraction in the area. It wasn't known that the women told anyone where they were going, so it was difficult to narrow down the search area. Now, it'd be different if someone came forward and said, oh, they told me they were going here.
Right. Or I seen somebody over that area that day.
But if it was the person who did them harm that they told, obviously that person's not coming forward and giving that information. Tornblom said that the authorities hesitated to start searching because they thought the women were at a party. He also said that when the government got involved, volunteers were ordered to stand down. And why would that be?
Yeah, maybe they felt like
they would contaminate, they would
get in the way,
possibly.
Or more injuries.
Or they would get injured. Yeah, I get that. I guess my thought is always the more people, the better.
I agree with you, you know.
If you're considering it a search party.
Right.
Now, if it's a criminal investigation, I understand. That's different. You don't want civilians, you know, messing up a criminal investigation. But if it is simply going out and searching, why wouldn't you want as many people as you can get?
Unless there's some type of cover-up. maybe you don't want civilians out there because you're trying to figure out what really happened, or what really happened. You're trying to make a recovery effort. I don't know. There's a lot of different theories that you could put behind this.
Cineproc security director Leisha Espinoza admitted that the first phase of the search was hindered because, according to her, nobody knew where to look. She confirmed that the official search started on April 6th. And again, we said that was about 5 days after they went missing. After 10 days, Cineproc ended the search. And we talked about it, right? A Dutch team came in at the end of May, but they left without any results. In June, when a woman found a backpack in the river, that's when a new wave of searches started, which were led by an unidentified guide, according to the Daily Beast. By the end of August 2014, 33 fragments were linked to Kris and Lisanne. 28 bones were from Lisanne's left foot, which was found behind a tree near the river. The Daily Beast reported that no grid search was done and no soil samples were taken to compare with evidence found in the autopsy. When the experts from the Dutch Forensic Institute looked at Lisanne's backpack, they found over 30 unidentified prints. Panamanian investigators had no print records related to the case, so the prints on the backpack could not be identified.
That's a lot of unidentified prints.
Yeah, but I'm thinking they traveled. So are people at airports?
There you go.
Handling the backpack. Security. Now, some of those prints could definitely belong to a person who maybe looked in the backpack, found the phone, tried to turn it on, and realized that they couldn't access it. One of the prints could belong to a killer.
That's true.
We don't know. You could take a taxi, and the taxi driver could help you with your bag.
Yeah.
And leave prints. I mean, it sounds like a big number, but when you start to think about it, somebody at the hotel could handle the bag. Somebody at the school could just move it.
That's all it takes.
Because it's in the way. And so I think the number of unidentified prints could add up pretty quickly for reasons other than foul play. Dr. Frank van de Goot, head of the Dutch team, told Nadette de Visser from the Daily Beast, "You can't really exclude a crime, but I remain of the opinion it was an accident scenario." So I like what he's saying there because he's right. You can't exclude either one, but he's saying, in his opinion, this was more likely an accident. He also said, the jungle absorbs everything. There's a constant offland wind, dogs can't smell you, and there is no phone reception. Van de Goot led a second team on the Pianista Trail in 2015, but they couldn't get to the river due to heavy rain. Now, it was pretty apparent from the research that a lot of locals doubt the accident theory. John Thornblum, who was hired by a private detective to investigate the case in 2014, questioned why no large bones were found with the other remains. He also recommended that the unidentified rancher/guide be investigated. Thornblum was one of several guides who said in interviews that they were concerned about this rancher. So it wasn't just him. Apparently there were other people who expressed their concern about this guy. But I want to go back to, this question of why no large bones were found.
It's a good question.
Only fragments.
Yeah.
There are a lot of bones in the human body, and there are some pretty large bones.
There are 200 and some bones, right?
I don't know. You're the doctor, Doogie. You tell me. But it is something that, has been running through my mind. Why just fragments? Where are the rest of these bones? Now, is it because fragments travel easier? Wind picks them up, pushes them over into the river. They float downstream. There are some possible explanations to that, but that could mean that the bodies are somewhere else, and that's where the large bones are. La Estrella reporter Adelita Coriat, who covered the case, told the Daily Beast, if a crime was involved, the rancher would have to be the top suspect.
Well, that's saying something right there.
Yeah, so she, covered this case. I'm assuming she talked to a lot of different people. it sounds to me, Gibbs, as though a lot of people thought that this rancher was suspicious. Let's use that word. She added, he has a son who lives up there too. As I understand it, they were both seen in the area when the women disappeared. But I don't think the police ever looked too closely into any of that. The Daily Beast also discussed the women's last phone and camera activity. Kris's iPhone first called 112 at 9:39 on April 1st. The last attempted call occurred on April 3rd. However, someone continued to power on the phone at the same time each day until April 6th.
Could have been one of the girls having the phone, but not able to
actually get a call to go out.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Maybe it was the, Kris trying to get the phone to open up. It didn't have the passcode. And then after the 6th, she was no longer alive to power it up.
Yeah. Yeah. We just don't know. I mean, somebody said that there was very poor service there. So is it possible that you would power it on, try to make a call, but it doesn't go out and that doesn't get registered? Or would it register? If a call never actually is initiated, does it even register on the iPhone?
Yeah, that I don't know.
It's a question. Yeah, I don't know either. But even, with some of this timing, there are conflicts between what the Daily Beast reported and what La Estrella reported. The Daily Beast reviewed over 100 images from Lisanne's camera. 90 of them were taken outdoors at night. The last photos were taken on April 8th. So this means that at least one of the women was likely still alive on April 6th when the search started.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to me. I said that Kris couldn't get the phone, but what I meant to say was Lisanne didn't have Kris's passcode and couldn't open it up, but she probably powered it up and tried to see if she could make any emergency connection.
Yeah, so you're saying that maybe at that point only one of the women was alive and was trying to access the other's cell phone.
Right.
But
could power. Yeah.
The iPhone turned on for the last time, as we mentioned earlier, on April 11th. Dr. Van de Goot's team declared they couldn't be certain whether or not a third party activated the phone that day. Well, I don't know how they could be certain of much. To be honest with you, could it have been, Kris or Lisanne that powered it? Possibly.
Sure, could have been.
Could it have been an unidentified person who found the backpack and tried to power it up? Sure. I think it could have been that as well. According to the Daily Beast, some people close to the case doubt that the women died in a hiking accident. There have been suggestions of a possible sex crime and murder, which was ignored or covered up. And that's interesting because you actually used the word covered up earlier.
Sure.
And now the Daily Beast is using it. The official footpath from Boquete up to the Continental Divide, the trail called La Pianista, is marked by an end of trail sign. However, there are unmarked trails that are not maintained by park rangers that are mostly used by indigenous people. These trails can be very dangerous. Many people believe that Kris and Lisanne would not have wandered off the main path into these unmarked trails willingly based on their clothing and the items they brought with them. They weren't prepared to spend a long time in the woods. And I think that's evident when you go through the contents of the backpack. They don't have a huge water supply.
They don't. They pack very light.
They packed light. They didn't bring a lot of extra clothes, food, ration. They just didn't bring a lot with them. This was not meant to be a multiple day hike. Some believe that the women were forced down the trails or abducted after returning from their hike, possibly while walking on the highway back to Boquete. Another theory is that they started to take these unmarked trails and got lost and disoriented and couldn't find their way back. And again, all of these theories, I think, at least in some part, are valid. They're possible.
Of course they are.
As we mentioned previously, the first images from April 1st show the women smiling. The weather appears sunny. There are a few selfies. And then the pictures show Kris walking on the trail. The final pictures from the first show Kris and Lisanne following an unmarked trail, or what has been described as an indigenous trail down the opposite side of the crest. Geographical features near a stream bed in the last few photos show that they were about an hour from the top of the Continental Divide and heading downhill away from Boquete. It's possible they took these photos because they were lost and were trying to mark where they had already been. So, the theories are interesting. They always are.
Sure they are.
And you know me, I kind of put them on my plausibility meter and kind of see where I think they land. Some of these to me, though, are landing pretty high. I don't think that they set out for a long walk, but is it possible that if they ventured down the wrong trail, that they got disoriented, they got lost? Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. I've done that. I did it 2 years ago.
Yeah, you got lost walking from your truck to my front door one time. I had to go out and get you. But
it can happen, with your, especially like for my case, my cell phone powered down.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't charge it up enough before I went, and I thought,
well, that was smart.
Yeah, I know. And then I got discombobulated.
Mm-hmm. Or discombobulated.
Discombobulated.
Or you just got discombobulated.
Yeah. And, if something that should have took me 2 hours took me 5 hours.
Yeah. So, well, we're glad you made it back.
Well, I'm here.
Kris's first phone call occurred 3 hours after sunset. According to the Daily Beast, it seems like the young women were trying to preserve their phone batteries because they turned on their phones at regular intervals daily until April 6th. This led to some speculation that something occurred on April 11th that left Lisanne with Kris's phone, but she didn't know the password to be able to use it. And that's something that, you kind of speculated on. Photo enhancements provide more details about the pictures on Lisanne's camera that were taken on the night of April 8th. The photos were taken in a jungle environment. The timing between photos varied from a few seconds to 15 minutes or longer. It was raining when the photos were taken, which matched weather reports from the time. Some images include a rock outcropping, tree formations, and plants. The photographer then took the same type of pictures from a different angle. One photo shows a trail marker made of sticks and plastics and a roll of tissue paper to spell out something on a boulder. A close-up photo of Kris shows a wound to her right temple. A witness survival expert told the Daily Beast that the photos could have been taken to mark the place where Lisanne left Kris in case she needed to find her way back. And just talking about that, it gives me the chills. Thinking about these two women out in a survival situation.
Right.
And one of them died. Let's say it was Kris who died first, and Lisanne is taking a picture of her and the surroundings to try to get back to her if she's able to find help. Whew. Okay. That's,
chilling.
Chills down the back of your spine type stuff. One of the images shows what could possibly be a body lying at the bottom of a river canyon. This photo was flagged by investigators, but the image is too dark to make an official determination about what exactly is in the picture. Another photo shows a man-made structure, likely one of the bridges used by indigenous people to cross rivers. Dutch physician Frank van de Goot told the Daily Beast that a final exam of the bones in Lisanne's left foot showed multiple fractures of the metatarsals. These fractures could only have been caused by a fall from a high place, according to the autopsy report. So based on the evidence, it seems to me as though many people believe that it seems likely that Lisanne tried to hike out of the river canyon system. She would have had to cross several branches of the river to reach the village of Alto Romero. As we talked about earlier, Kris's shorts were found lying on a narrow piece of land between two tributaries. The person who found them claimed they found them zipped, folded, and set on a rock above the waterline on the opposite bank of the tributary from where the nighttime photos were taken. So if this is correct, it most likely means that one of the women probably crossed the first river depicted in the night photos, and Kris's shorts might have been used as a marker. So I think some people are thinking like a little bit of a Hansel and Gretel vibe here.
Yeah, Cookie crumbs?
Breadcrumbs, or whatever. They're leaving markers to try to, get back if that way is not correct, maybe. Lisanne's backpack was found on the riverbank near Alto Romero, a few kilometers downstream from Kris's shorts. And then Lisanne and Kris's remains were found upstream and downstream from the village of Alto Romero, which means Lisanne would have had to have died very close to where Kris died. The Daily Beast writes that it's possible Lisanne could have fallen from one of the bridges over the river tributaries or from a cable bridge. If she broke her foot from falling, she might not have been able to continue down the trail and was left stranded in the river. And she might have turned on the iPhone for the last time on April 11th to try to get help. So I think, as we're wrapping this one up, Gibbs, as most people will see, there are far more questions than answers. There are tons of theories. There are tons of possibilities. There's very few concrete answers in this case. We still don't know why exactly Kris and Lisanne decided to leave the safety of the marked trail. Although experts consider it unlikely, it is possible they were forced off the trail by someone. Many people have dedicated their time to try to figure out what happened to Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, such as journalist Mariana Atencio, who created an in-depth podcast called Lost in Panama, which also talks about additional women and girls missing in the area. Authors Marja West and Jurgen Snoren wrote the book Lost in the Jungle, the mysterious disappearance of two Dutch girls in the Panamanian jungle, which further explores the young women's final days and what could have happened to them. Additionally, former Amsterdam detective Dick Steffens told the authors that Kris Kremers may still be alive. He claimed that a man named Stephen W. came forward and said Kris ended up in the sex trade. Stephen W. said he would be able to free her, but her family never heard from him again.
Seems like a bad claim. I mean, if you could free her, why wouldn't you just go ahead and free her?
Oh, no, because he might want something for it.
Oh, he wants some payment to do it.
Yeah. Or he doesn't know anything, and he's one of these individuals who, is trying to make a buck and or is trying to cause the family more heartache. I don't understand these people. I'm not saying that's what he's doing, but to make that claim and then to never follow up with the family,
right?
That makes no sense at all.
Especially when there was reward money out there. I'm sure that they could have worked out something and paid him.
Oh, absolutely.
If he could go recover her, bring her to them, they'd be like, very thankful. Oh, by the way, here, take this.
Sure. Now, this possible theory of Kris ending up in the sex trade, that comes up a lot in a lot of unsolved cases. We know it's out there.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think it's more prevalent than most of us even realize, than I even realize. So it is a possibility, but a lot of these are possibilities. But no matter what happened to Kris and Lisanne, I think everyone can agree that their lives ended far too soon on what was supposed to be a special trip for both of them. I have no idea what happened. I tend to lean a little bit towards the accident angle.
Yeah.
Based on the evidence that is known. This thought that they were kind of leaving markers, the iPhones being turned on at regular intervals does seem like someone who's lost, who's trying to turn it on for a little bit, save battery just to find out if they can get a signal.
Yeah, it sounds like somebody in survival mode.
Yeah, it really does. And, this one thing that we really haven't talked about is this finding that it's most likely that Lisanne fractured her foot due to a fall from a high place.
In a place like that, it's going to be tragic, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's hard enough if you've got all your faculties and you can walk, but you lose the ability to walk, then you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
Now, even though you have somebody else with you, but we know she didn't make it out either.
Yeah, I mean, when you have somebody else with you that is potentially injured and weak, how can they help you?
Yeah. But it almost sounds like one of the women was making a marker for the other one to either get help, try to get back to them,
right,
or something along those lines. But who knows? I mean, there could have been foul play involved.
Could have been.
It just, my mind kind of goes more towards accident in this one, but you can't really say conclusively that anything happened or didn't happen.
No, because we just don't know.
We just don't know. But that's it for our episode on Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Right. I've just listened to the Shirley Finn episode. I've got to say, I've never been more disappointed. I mean, you start the episode and it's about Australia. So you ask Gibby how he's doing. I think he's going to start off with, you know, I've been out with my mate. We were playing a rousing game of footy. I was wearing my budgie smuggler. We were listening to Akadeka. You know, he's a master of all cultures and accents. And what do we get? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm wrecked. No longer Team Gibby. I'm wrecked. Destroyed. I can't take it anymore. That's it. G'day, mate.
Wait, why'd you say your name's Rick?
Did you say fudgy smuggler?
I think so.
Or something like that.
I mean, I've been on restriction from the Australian government on using the accent.
That's true.
Until they lift the restriction that they have on me, it's been a problem for sure.
Let's face it. You dropped the ball on that one, and you're just going to have to take credit for it.
Just have to take how it is, mate.
That's how it is. That's how it is. You dropped the ball.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Tim. I'm calling from Paragould, Arkansas, and I had a case suggestion for you. I've been listening for a long time. I worked all the way through the Unsolved, and now I'm about halfway through the regular TCAT. And, you know, y'all did your episodes on Ronald DeFeo and the Amityville Horror.
And they got him, didn't they? The Amityville Horror ghost struck again.
You mean in ending that phone call?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess I didn't notice that the first time through. That it just kind of ended. I thought there was more to it.
A little spooky, huh?
Yeah. Now it's like a real mystery.
Yeah.
To figure out what he was going to suggest.
I think they don't want you to know what he wanted to suggest.
It sounded like something along the lines of DeFeo Amityville.
The spirits have spoken.
All right. Call back and let us know.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. My name's Gabby. I'm currently listening to your South Pole poisoning case on Unsolved. I just wanted to let you all know that the movie Gibby's talking about, when he's talking about the stray dogs and having to be left because a storm had come in and they had to leave the dogs, is called 8 Below. I don't know if anyone else has given you the name yet, but I figured let you all know that was the name of the movie that Gibby was talking about. I hope you all have a good rest of your day and stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
She just confirmed I'm a movie expert.
You are. Yeah. You are. Now, what people don't know is that you secretly know the names of all the movies. You know the actors, you know their places of birth, their birth dates, all that. But you purposefully act like you don't know.
But I don't.
Because you want to give people the chance to call in and let us know.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. I'm trying to give you credit. Yeah. Everybody knows that's not true.
It'd be great if it was.
It'd be great if it was.
But no.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
See what's streaming free all month long during Amplify AAPI Voices on Pluto TV. Watch shows like Kim's Convenience with Simu Liu and amazing movies like Meet the Patels and Jason Momoa in Braven. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies and TV shows, available on live and on demand. Download Pluto TV on all your favorite devices for free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.